1982 kulikuwa na coup. 1982 kulikuwa na coup.
This is the voice of Kenya, Nairobi. Time now is 12 minutes past 6. You are hereby informed that everybody is requested to stay at home. There should be no movement in town. The government has now been taken over by the military until further notice. There should be no movement of persons or vehicles from one place to another. The police should now assume their role of civilian until further notice. This is the voice of Kenya, Nairobi. The time now is 14 minutes past 6. You are hereby informed that a curfew everybody should be declared. Everybody should, what is this? Stay. Everybody should stay at home. There should be no movement in town. The government has now been taken over by the military until further notice. There should be no movement of persons or vehicles from one place to another. The police should now assume the role of civilian until further notice.
A warning. The government has been taken by a very, very, very powerful group supported by the people, wananchi wenyewe na wanajeshi wote. Kwa hivyo, wherever you are, cooperate or you blame yourself. Thank you. Voice of Kenya.
My dear countrymen, here is an announcement. It is with the greatest pleasure that I announce to you today the overthrow of the corrupt regime of Daniel Arap Moi by the patriotic forces of our country. As I speak to you now, our country is fully and firmly under the control of our armed forces. Every care has been taken to make the revolution as bloodless as possible. Fellow Kenyans, over the past few years, this country has been shedding from an open to a closed, dictatorial, and inhuman society. The fundamental principles for which many of our people sacrificed their lives during the heroic struggle for independence have been compromised in the interest of a few greedy and irresponsible bandits. Over the past 6 months, we have witnessed with disgust the imposition of a de jure one-party system without the people's consent, arbitrary arrest and the detention of innocent citizens, censorship of the press, intimidation of individuals, and general violation of fundamental human rights. This ruthless oppression and repression is reminiscent of the past colonial days which Kenyans thought were buried at independence. A gang of local tyrants has emerged whose only function is to terrorize and intimidate with senseless warnings. Rampant corruption, tribalism, nepotism has made life almost intolerable in our society. The economy of this country is in shambles due to corruption and mismanagement. The cost of living in Kenya today is among the highest in the world. Wananchi can no longer afford to meet the basic requirements of life due to exorbitant prices of the basic necessities such as food, housing rent, transport. Above that, Kenyans are among the highest taxed people in the world today. Wananchi, under these circumstances, our armed forces have headed the people's call to liberate our country once again from the forces of oppression and exploitation in order to restore liberty, dignity, and social justice to the people. In doing this, we have proved to the rest of the world that no individual or group of people can permanently subjugate or take away the freedom which our fathers and grandfathers so gallantly fought to bring to this country. Like the British imperialists, the same fate will befall whoever attempts to tamper with our freedom. Countrymen, it is not the intention of the military to stay in power indefinitely. As soon as the situation allows, elections will be held and Wananchi will be given an opportunity to choose their leaders. Our immaculate task is to stamp out corruption and set out a concise program of development for Kenya. We will continue with the original policies which this country set at independence and which have been eroded over the years, thus giving rise to the current sad state of affairs. A number of administrative and security measures will be announced in due course. This revolution is entirely an internal affair, and our friends have nothing to fear. We will strengthen relations with our neighboring countries and we will continue to champion the policy of non-alignment and non-interference in the internal affairs of other countries. As for now, the Constitution has been suspended and a National Liberation Council has been set up to preside over the affairs of the government and state. All the detainees and political prisoners are released forthwith with immediate effect. Long live Kenya. Long live the People's Redemption Council. Thank you very much.
This is a statement on behalf of all the students of Kenya. On behalf of the students and the people of Kenya, we, the University of Nairobi students, register our wholehearted and unconditional support for the August 1st revolution organized by the Kenya People's Redemption Council. We humbly request our new popular government to accord us the freedom we have always cried for. Thank you.
And maybe it would be good to start with like everyone else, if you have any memories like passed down, handed, or if you learned, or at least even a teacher mentioned the coup and in what context. Just to be great to hear what is in people's minds when they think about this. In the call, we didn't even say the coup because if you in the writing, then they keep saying failed, attempted. They like to repeat that, so we think, I'm assuming there's a PR campaign behind that to ensure that that's the language we use. So even just thinking of the date, not even like this kind of political aspect, but be great to hear any words, images that are in your mind around this date.
I think it was a weekend and I was living in my small house in Buruburu, which was an extension far away from home. And I woke up to the news that there has been a coup. We were very scared. I could not go home. And in the streets, in the roads of Buruburu, kukaanza kuwa na zile gari, gari, watu wamepanda gari, making noise. And then on Monday, because it was a working day, and we were so afraid of losing our jobs, I had to go to work. And there was a lot of chaos. I remember tukipita pale Wakulima Market, there were bodies lying on the streets. It was a very scary Monday. And then we went to the office, we couldn't even work. Tukapewa ruhusa turudi nyumbani. Now the problem was, even as we were walking in town to look for our transport back home, I was deliberating on whether to go home or back to my little house in Buruburu. But it was easier to go to Buruburu because we used to live at Upper Hill. Na I didn't know the situation ya kutembea kupita Uhuru Park kwenda juu. And so while we were walking, unasikia tu gunshots, mnakimbia kwa duka, zile zimefunguliwa, wenye duka wanafunga. And then luckily I got a matatu. But when I was inside, to my dismay, ilikuwa inaenda Huruma na mimi naenda Buruburu. But sasa hata singe alight, there was a lot of chaos, matatu imeenda mbio, tumepita Kariakoo huko, tukapita hiyo njia ya Huruma hivi, sasa tunaelekea Huruma. And then kufika our destination huko Huruma, mimi niko Huruma na tunaenda Buruburu. Then there was this man in a KCC truck ya maziwa. Nikamuomba tu anipatie tu lift. Alikuwa anaelekea hivyo. Nikamwambia mimi naishi Buruburu, siwezi kukaa Huruma. It was very scary. Na unajua tukienda Huruma hivi tulipita, kuna zinaitwa barracks huko Pangani, alafu unapita hivi. It was very very bad. Sasa huyo mtu wa maziwa akanibeba, lakini alikuwa anaenda sijui depo ya KCC ilikuwa na huko Buruburu, I can't even remember. Tukaenda hivi na yeye, luckily tu akanidrop Buruburu na akaenda, mimi nikaenda nyumbani. I can't even remember after that what we did. I was worried. Kina Faye wako Upper Hill, mimi niko Buruburu. It was very scary na tukuwa na phone call. So hicho kipindi tukakaa sasa home, trucks za army zinapita, watu na maguns, hivyo mpaka kulipotulia ndio tukarudi job. Na tuliporudi job ndio unasikia fulani mtoto wake alishutiwa huko town, sijui fulani, sijui amekufa. After that I just went home. It was a very very terrible experience for me.
What I remember about the coup was that I think I was in Form 1, we were home for holidays. And what alerted us first was there's no news. Those days there used to be some song that is played before the news starts. It didn't come. We only had some, I think, army band songs or marching bands or something. Then after that there was some reggae music. Then I think Nenad Mambo Botella announced that the government had been overthrown. So there was a lot of fear. We were told to stay indoors, couldn't move about, and there's a lot of fear. Everybody was a bit scared. and we were not allowed to, like, a group. Those days, not many people had TVs, so you couldn't go watch in someone's house like many of you. You just had to stay at your house, and you couldn't move up and down. I remember my brother, whose birthday was on 1st of August. We could not celebrate ever after that, because I think they were told if you do that, it's like you're celebrating the coup. And there was really not much information. Nobody talked about it. After that, no one said. But I know there's a lot of fear because my brother was supposed to go to university, was now told he couldn't go because I think a lot of university students either were killed or had to run away during that period. So parents were even scared of sending their kids to university. So my brother never went to university. I think he went for a diploma, Egerton, that time to a diploma university, diploma college. He couldn't go to college. But the only thing we remember was that fear, and the adults were whispering, and we couldn't hear anything else. That's all I remember.
I think it was also interesting to like appreciate that we were, I think all of us born after the coup, and so we were mostly relying on like handed down knowledge and memories, and what we read in the newspapers and in the news and in the archive, and we know the limits of the archives and the weaknesses of the archives, and we know how, you know, the stories are selected and who gets mentioned, who doesn't get a voice, etc, etc. So this is just also sort of an attempt to imagine, like, if that was for us, if we wanted that, how would we occupy that space, you know, like, yeah. So if we didn't want to stay home, what would we do? You know, and like it's also, it's sort of that always confrontation that you get when you encounter the utadunini kind of thing that Nairobi does to you, you know, like utadu and stuff. So like yeah, you know, so there's that space. And I'd like to read something from Benaventure, so editor of the archive, the Survey Contemporary, and let me see what it does. Yeah. So, with rest assured, body no be firewood. The emphasis will be in sharing space, in seeing each other and getting to know each other. It will be in acknowledging each other's presence, like the black node. It will be about listening to each other closely as that possibility of communion. It is not about performing anything, even while doing performances, or striving for anything, but of creating space to be able to listen to that voice within me talking, and collectively so. It's about talking the hand held by your brother / sister. We eat, drink, dance, watch videos, share our practices, sleep, laugh, dance, do nothing else but be. It will be a simple effort to inquire of each other's well-being. In some parts of the African continent, when you are asked, "How are you?" people answer, "I am fine if you are fine." In other places, when you say good morning, people respond, "My morning is good if your night was good." It is this idea that my well-being depends on your well-being that guides and frames rest assured, body not be firewood. But most of all, it is a space where we claim the right to rest, especially because, truly, body not be firewood. The hope is that we will be able to carry on after the weekend of retreat. Yeah, so like, just thinking about how difficult it's been the past couple of forever. You know, yeah, so like, you know, like when you need like these anchors and when it's shit is flailing, yeah, yeah, the space. Space is the place. Yeah. Sandras is you work on the other side of time. Thinking about time and
Always thinking about time.
yeah. I don't know.
I'm just thinking about how that was how many years ago? 40. There should be no movement of passions.
Ulishika hiyo pia.
And vehicles. And I mean, 2 years ago.
Vehicles or geckos.
And 2 years
Vehicles or
ago.
geckos.
I mean, and that announcement has been made many times in different whatever
Scenarios, formats, yeah.
Post-election, Mavita Zoko, Mau, whatever. Most recently, the pandemic. Like it's always with us, that voice, that whatever. Yeah. I'm just thinking about that, like time and how it's cutting across the generations.
Yeah.
Remember to use a mic. So one of the when it was there's a time that it sounded, I mean, it's like this was 1982, right?
Yeah.
It's supposed to be an announcement from 1982. It sounds like an announcement from 1982, but exactly like he said, especially the inflation, the cost of living.
Taxes.
I was like,
Most highly taxed people.
I mean, the same line can be played today on TV, and it would be complete. I mean, it would be so like spot on. So like that part for me was like, what? Like so, it's like the country never changes, or does it? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Namsa nataka drink.
Monday.
Kuna
Drink for me. The second one.
About a sort of a Kenyan what if. Like I would be very curious to know what would have happened if they
Right? Right? That's the other thing. That's the other question that we are. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, Cliff really wanted to
Nini
us to
yangu,
work with
ile-
someone to do
ile-
some speculative fiction, like you just write as if the coup was a success.
It's so cool.
That would be
Ile ni ya
Are there
meta.
ideas that are coming to your mind as you mention it?
As I was listening to that, I was just thinking about. I mean, have you guys read How to Be Both? Ali Smith, where the book is
Oh,
now
yes,
and then
and-
it's happening.
Yeah.
Like something
No,
like that, with both outcomes. So that was what
the meta.
Propaganda, the left of propaganda, but just
The meta
have
one.
a glimpse of both.
Sorry.
possibilities, like if it went well for the people or if we went back to the kakistocracy that we have. Yeah, I mean, to play around with time travel, see someone who has the ability to see different whatever. Yeah, I was just thinking about that.
Yes.
Just a question, because we have seen revolutions happen across the continent, which people thought of as huge revolutions.
Sri Lanka 2 weeks
the spring.
ago.
And who amongst the spring nations still can say that this is a good thing? This is a thing that not that this is a thing that happened, but this is a good thing that happened. And I mean, also another question is the fate of, for a lot of us in the continent, like what happens when governments fall.
Where a lot of people have written about how quickly revolutions are corrupted and won over, it's almost like training practice for power. It's like now it finds a new way to reimagine and reassert itself, and it does so in ways that are kind of unimaginable, like the brutality of it. Like T. Lawrence has this wonderful passage where he says, youth had learned to win but not to hold or to keep. Like the young people, whoever it is in this context, will do the work to cause a revolution, to start whatever the idea of a new dawn, and very quickly, the very next morning, like your old guard will find a way to kind of
come in,
insinuate themselves into that. So it's in that way, it's a very depressing understanding of a revolution that is just giving ammunition for power to strengthen itself.
And forget. I mean, it's. I saw Josie on the news that the ousted president of Sri Lanka is heading back to the country. I'm like, like people stormed his house. They were swimming in his pool, drinking his liquor. Like they wanted, like there is. Unaweza imagine something kwa hao yako wako like toka, and then now he's coming back, and then me, I'm like I mean. Yo, but it's crazy to wrap your mind around that. You're like, how the audacity of power, manze. The audacity.
Yeah, I mean, I think for Kenya, it's just that the idea of like the dynasty is so strong. Like, even working on this project, we're thinking of like this is just a few days to the election. The names on the ballots.
Manze. Like it's not even a conversation we can start even having.
Exactly.
Like the premise already is fucked up. Like people anaanza kunuliza like story election. I'm like you can't start from like a negative position. Like hakunanga argument hapo. Tunaanza kuongelea wapi sasa? Like what are you talking about?
So I want to read Pancras' defense when he was appealing to the High Court, Court of Appeal. So one of the people I think who we had doing the announcement is Pancras. The very elaborate one.
Yes.
I think so. I'm not sure.
It sounds like it.
Singing in Nini.
That was so funny. Just so good.
So Frank had told me, I'll come back to this a bit later, but Frank had told me that there had been more attempts with the death of Kenyatta, with the ascension of Moi, or the sickness or the late days of Kenyatta, which is the late 70s. But anyway, so me, I didn't have anyone to ask because I think my mother was a teenager at the time. But anyway, so the government built this elaborate case from it to like witnesses upon witnesses upon witnesses, like everything was laid out. You can map the entire thing from when it was started, apparently in April, at least of 82, to late July. So this case has been built about this guy who's apparently second in command after he retired. And I mean, I really don't know about the second in command thing because these are junior soldiers. Because there are other commands somewhere. Apparently on Ngong Road. For Adams. So this is after this entire case has been built. And the guy just goes out on a whim and says this. Your Honor, sir, before 1st August 1982, I had information that Njonjo, that's Charles Njonjo, then Minister
Minister of Constitutional Affairs or something.
Constitutional Affairs was planning to overthrow the Kenyan government, and he was going to use the Kenyan Air Force as one of instruments to do that. I therefore came to the conclusion that Charles Njonjo, who wanted to overthrow the government, wanted to use the then Air Force as an instrument. He had influenced Kenyan Air Force officers, and therefore sounds weird. I made my own resolution to destabilize the Kenya Air Force so that if that alleged coup of Charles Njonjo's came in swing, there will be no Kenya Air Force for him to use. Your Honor, I never ever intended to overthrow the Kenyan government. And at all times I believe my actions were only meant to destabilize the Kenya Air Force, thereby rendering it incapable of being used by Charles Njonjo to change this coup. And if you've done speech and public speaking and poetry,
you know,
what is repeated here?
Yeah.
So I wonder about that. I wonder why we don't talk about that. Or if there is, like when you're talking about archive as
being incomplete and being
incomplete.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious what filtered out, because the people I've spoken to, my mother introduced me to them, like my parents' friends, and like I haven't had in-depth conversations with them. But what everyone has talked about is that kind of that silence, and I think even that, like people have mentioned, the surprise of, why are you asking about, like, what is it for? And then, you know, so I told my mother there's this thing called SummerWorks. It's like, oh, ni wazungu. I was like, yeah. And she's like, oh. Like, okay, you know, that makes sense. But then I think it's just like 40 years, that's what is the life expectancy of a Kenyan? Like if you're born in 82, right?
Actually,
when is
the life expectancy of a Kenyan?
I think it's now high, around 56. Maybe 60. Yeah. So
acha kuangalia. Unataka kutacha aki wewe. Stop depressing her.
When we were in school, I think it's gone high. When we were in primary school to learn that age. Yeah. Maybe it's gone high. But I think when you were talking about the formats this could take, it's like, how do you represent silence? We like the idea of the static and like the white noise and kind of an absence, but it's so hard to represent that. Like I like the sound. I used to like the sound when TV was over. Like you know that the programming has ended, and exactly like so good. But with right now we never have good endings. We know the start of like that's a Netflix show. There's always a start, but there's no sound for an end.
I'm thinking those are like some of the things that they're supposed to like just be that like that, like in the way that like it's the space of possibility. Unajua, it's like the noise that kids make before the teacher comes in class. Unajua, before watu waseme nyamazeni. Like the call to order that Fred Morton talks about, you know. It's just before that. Unajua, all that is like.
But you see, that's like to me, like that is it's almost like I want to say, what is the counter to that? How do you show like dissolution? And that's what that moment meant. What that moment meant is the decline of a lot of university organizing, student organizing. What that meant is like there's what it like, even that's why even being saying yote yawezekana, like that like I was trying to give you a sense of like, I'm trying to think with how do you show what it meant when the takeover happened? Like what ended in that moment, especially in a moment where it was never addressed again.
Like, so what had been lost? What had been
exactly
missing?
Thank you for phrasing it like that.
What was missing? It's nani so jina mepotea. Nimecheka kidogo. But anaitwa nani?
Interrupt ukikumbuka. Should I say something?
Sema.
So another thing that my mother was talking about is like around the time, because of like obviously the stigma of being associated with it, people were changing their names, because in the how do you say, in the lashing back, in the clamp down, they were, I mean, I don't have all the numbers given so much kind of erasure, but according to my mother, like they would kill not just you, your wife, your children, your siblings, your parents. So that's like an entire line that was essentially kind of annihilated. And so to survive, you would completely change your family name. And of course the association with a lot of the movement is like a Luo, like this associated with Luos, and so people would remove the O from their name. And she was saying that's why you'll find a Luo called Maina, because you're like, you just don't want to kind of tamp down on that risk of even being associated with kind of rebellion. And what that looked like additionally is people being afraid to go to university, because as you heard, UN was very firmly aligned with the so-called people, what are they called? National Liberation Council. The People's Redemption.
People's Redemption. They're different. No, they're different. That's the other thing, right? Because I know about the redemption bit.
So, the I was looking for last time, Nani Hartman.
Saidia.
Yes. Akiongea na Fred Morton, alafu when she talks about the gaps, like the gaps in power and what falls through, like she's interested in the gaps in power and what falls through. And I'm thinking about that, like that phrase is interesting, like the gaps in power. Because like I'm feeling probably Sakasai, we could say that we are in a moment kind of like that. Like you can tell that like nobody knows shit, nobody like for real. Like into bed, nobody knows shit. Like people are just winging it. And so what falls through in those gaps of power?
But then I guess I wonder about the willingness to move in, to imagine out of those spaces, because I think, excuse me, what I hear in those recordings and some of that language is a sense of possibility. Like, for some reason, if we somehow found people who are in the military, I don't think I have the enthusiasm, the dopamine, like I don't have any of that to be like, oh yeah, we could probably do a coup. And that's what BM was asking, like, excuse me, can we have a coup like today?
Yeah. So like, I mean, I don't know. Then again, like, your issue about the tree, like the revolution and it always being an incomplete cycle. Even if you were there, even if you did go on the streets, like, the Sri Lankans and have done their stuff, but like, is it just a way of providing new kindling to capital, like what Alex was asking about, like, and how do you know that your effort is not just like, how do you know you're not just working against yourself? Because
what does that mean, like working against yourself?
In the way that you believe you try to take down one thing one system only to replace it with another system or something like that. Like I've seen like I've seen these conversations online about this these new people who came out around I don't want to mention names because names are tricky, but like there's these new people who came around, this whole reign in KPLC, Usawa Sasa and all of this thing, and that are now like aligning themselves in a particular way, unajua, and stuff like that. And these are people that we knew and that like watukasi. So you're like, okay, I mean, if you want to burn it all down, if that's the point, you do realize that like it means even burning down that like penye unatoa unga, like we want to burn all of that down. So like yeah.
I have an idea for a coup. This is this is the second time I'm saying it out loud in public, and the first time it landed on my head, I was so scared of myself. I was so scared I was gonna be, I don't know, killed and disappeared. Yeah. The first time I said it, I don't think a lot of people saw me, but I said it at once after a film. So my idea is, like, so when, elections are like 9 days from now, And for me, I'm like, I don't see the point of voting because I feel like there are no options. It's been the same things over and over again. And I'm like, we don't have options. And then these guys also, they do the same things over and over again. So my idea is if, and it also goes against me, but it's like the best way to beat capitalism, but also at the same time, it will mess all of us up. I think the answer you are giving, so it's like for me, the idea was, what if we killed money? So like the next time that we hear that someone has stolen like $1 billion or 5 billion, we say we're not using money anymore. We say, okay, take all of it, but like we're not using money anymore. And that's scary because again, we're trapped in capitalism, and we all have money or have saved up money.
How nice.
But if that's the tool that they're using against us, then we can be like, if we can find other ways to survive, then we can, all the stashes that they have. So the only thing we can't fight is land because like the paperwork and everything. But in terms of money, it's like you come, you want to give me a job to run your campaign. You want to give me, let's say $10,000. I'm like, no, I need I don't know, like this much maize or cornflakes or whatever. And then you're so confused. You're like, I'm giving you money. But they made the money so, like this whole story of when we're talking about people starving or people suffering, we always resort to saying they're uneducated or they're lazy. But that's not the truth in so many ways. It's just that money is only circulating in certain areas, and I mean, we are kind of lucky enough somehow, everyone who's here, to be able to access it in bits. But I feel like money is a weapon of today. It's like the gun that the colonizer held on us, but now it's some people with large chunks of it who are using it
distribute it
to control us and to just mess us up. So
well, there was this movement among largely young people in China. I can't think of the specific regions, but fairly widespread. Translates to laying down.
I'm continuing to get rid of the negative energy in my life. I think 2022 will be an upgrade on 2021. But I still don't want to do anything. Continue to lie flat. I enjoy and like this state.
They're calling it the lying flat movement.
And a bunch of people just decided, no, I'm not going to work. I'm only going to work when I run out of money. I'm not going to spend things. I don't want to get married. I don't want babies. I don't want to buy things. Just lay down. Some of them play video games, like maybe just have enough money to afford like food and your internet, and like not aspiring to more, not trying to do. And I mean, which sounds really straightforward, but it's like I think just the idea that you'd say, no thanks, like, so that's exactly that.
So what happened after coup, like from what we've had? What we played, prisoners got released, what happens to the banks or like stuff like that?
Well, I know the primary thing was they were trying to bomb State House, right? They were trying to get the Air Force pilots. They had them, I think some of them at gunpoint, but I think some of them, I would imagine some of them were part of the coup. But then I don't know what happened. I'm really curious to get some radio.
Apparently there's now the chief of staff for Stephen would be deployed to northern Kenya, into Turkana, to do a kind of patrol because I think the Nini war, the shifter war, might have been happening, or was there was something, but there was a general who flew. Like, this is according to the code documents.
Yes.
I have no other sources. So that general, civilian.
Sorry? Shika. No, shika. No, shika ya baby.
So anyway, this general is training in northern Kenya. So this general who's been deployed to northern Kenya to kind of do a counter offensive against the shifters and to do the shifter war is flown back immediately. I don't remember the exact details, but he's the one who's mounting a campaign at VOK now to like not bomb, but there's this entire battle scene that seems out of like 24 with Jack Bauer. Like there's this entire scene where they retake over VOK, and now that's when Ochuka and Pancras flee back to Isili. And then they take the plane, and then but according to the documents, the pilots who were held at gunpoint didn't know that they were being taken to Tanzania. They thought they were being taken to, is there an airbase in Laikipia?
It could be.
So,
Yeah.
Right.
It's Laikipia.
Oh, for the whites. So midway, they're taken back. It's an intriguing story if you read it as fiction. But then over the years, they expatriated. Nyerere and Moi at some point begin to like each other, because you notice in one of the speeches, he's saying, "Us, we will never disturb our neighbors. Something we will respect our neighbors."
Non-interference.
So but something happens over there, and I think so. I mean, the deep seat, whatever. So anyway, I suppose that's how they were now brought back to Kenya. And I was reading they were brought back through Namanga. The court documents say they were not tortured. They gave their testimonies freely.
Really?
But I suppose that's the story. But like Alex was saying, like a lot of families associated with anything to do with these guys either killed or jailed and disappeared. And like with most records in the country, like and archives, as you say. And I think that's where the poets come in. Right.
My thought is not yet.
Well, the thing is,
can we pass
Coca-Toko.
No, I'm just listening to Clifton share all of this detail that you got from the court documents, and thinking about how we not remember, but how we forget what we forget in whatever happened around the coup. We remember Mambo Mbachala, right? We remember KBC, but then the prisons and just all of those details that you're sharing that I don't actually have any idea about, what is.
Well, where would you have had that? Where would you have found those?
We don't even, it's not
in the curriculum.
Not even in movies
there's
or
also something
fiction or
There's also something interesting, Leona, that on the day of the coup, that there was looting in shops, and as well as aside from the shops, that people looted homes of rich people. That people stormed houses of rich people. There were like houses of rich people that were looted, and that so when the looting was happening in town near CBD, people also targeted houses, some rich people. So I've been thinking about that, and that idea that a struggle can be multifaceted. In the way that there are people who want some type of power, and there are others who want some other type of power. Like struggle like there's this conversation about PV07 not being multifaceted, like something about class, something about tribe, something about like several things, like a potluck of things.
Everything everywhere all
and
at once.
And then there's something that Angela Davis and Nikki Giovanni always talk about the minimization of the other struggles within the civil rights time. Really, and black people's, like we had queer people's in there, we had women rights in there, and when the Reverend MLK got on the podium, it was a black people thing. Like it was like it was a struggle that was solidified into this one monolith. But in that monolith, it excludes so many people and so many struggles here. So in that way, I was also just curious that hii struggle ya Skies, like unasikia kwa studio hiyo kitu hata iko scripted. Like if they had a good script writer here.
They're about to pay him.
It was just reached out. I'm sure there were people who could. I'm sure there were people who had ideas, unajua, but because they wanted power, or because they wanted like power in that time, but like I don't know, maybe Mercedes ya Kenyatta. I don't know what power looked like in 1982.
Can you imagine what kind of like detail we would get if, like, when I was talking to my dad and then he's mentioning at your time the Nyanya Stadium was being built, so what he remembers is the amount of soil because they were constructing it at the time. The next day he was just watching from upper hill, and then that's where people were, there was some fighting there, and the army was coming there, and I wonder what kind of detail we would get from just speaking to people who
Do you guys want to hear my mom's?
Yes. Do it with the microphone.
Okay. Do I send it to you playing like a Bluetooth?
I think itashika kwa hiyo mic.
Oh, no, but for everybody.
Yes. Maybe send it to me. Then I can speak up.
Niko na namba yako, nilikuwa na namba yako tulikosana.
Sasa niko na namba. 72.
Kidogo.
Ngoja sisi nimepea tunachukua.
Oh, let me read you this thing. So I was reading some of the economic reports post this thing, and this babes at York University put out this thing, and she obviously. So I liked the start because I was trying to find like how people. I mean, I wanted to see how economics people write about this thing, but so I remembered this one line and I wanted to read it. Extolled as one of the third world's politically most stable and economically most progressive nations, Kenya saw its reputation undermined in 1982 by an attempted coup and by the rapid deterioration of its economy. On August 1st, 1981, 81. She said 81. So anyway, where's the peer review? Junior members of the Air Force briefly seized control of the state broadcasting headquarters and 2 air bases. And then, this was really curious, with the spontaneous participation of university students, they marched on They marched on downtown Nairobi, triggering several hours of looting and violence around the city before loyal army troops and police restored order. In its brief moment in the spotlight, the rebels' self-styled People's Redemption Committee accused the government of a ruthless repression reminiscent of the colonial days. But then, the important data that they go on to flag is like just the exact rate of how bad the economy was, which is like, it sounds very like a, economist review post-pandemic recovery, so-called. So then she writes about like a major problem like linked to all these economic issues and she writes, Kenya had to go hat in hand to the International Monetary Fund for emergency funds to keep the economy afloat. And she gives some detail on this, which is to say, apparently expenditure, this is ridiculous, expenditures for public administration, agriculture and debt servicing required a 77% increase in government borrowing in fiscal year 81 to 82. 77%.
Aren't those the structural adjustment programs from the IMF and the
So
World
this is,
Bank?
this is an article funded by the IMF.
This is, sounds like
God.
it's really...
Isn't this
That's so
wild?
wild because they would use those same SOPs to like curtail university student organizing. The spontaneous so-called.
So cool. It's so condescending to me.
Yeah.
Like it's like there's no thinking involved, there's no strategy. They are just sparked by some primitive native impulse.
Natives, how they're just waiting for things to happen.
And but then you've seen them, they've started with the peace caravan this election period. Like, I mean, it's so predictable, man. Like 2013, 2017, sai tena. Like you have Uyano, sijui nini, and you're like,
tulikuwa toi tukasikia hii mbaya ilikuwa inaenda ikicheza.
They've been playing it a lot.
They pacify you with peace.
And everyone was just in agreement that when they play that song, it's
wanachezanga hiyo song alafu saa hiyo ile tank iko nje ya Supreme Court.
Alex, imeisha hapo.
I mean, it's a long article, but I'll share some other pieces. I just wanted. Is it on my WhatsApp? Should I?
It's on your WhatsApp.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm also just going to add something to what Alex had said earlier about this like lay down movement, which, I mean, I'm also interested in like what little coups exist in our everyday against power. Like to just be like, you know what, today I don't need that much, so I really like the story of like people who like, you know what, I just need to sell 20 mandazis, 20 samosas, and maybe like 10 chapatis. And if I'm finished at noon, I go home at noon. If I'm finished at 3, I go home at 3. So like, how do we also organize our lives differently? Like, our own concepts of time, but also
intimate coups.
All little intimate coups, our own infra politics. How do we practice those? I remember reading something in uni around how oftentimes how you'd frustrate your employers, like your tools, you break your tools, and you can't do anything with broken tools. So now everything is slow that day. So now first of all you have to fix the tools before you can continue to work. And also just finding what are the how do we also have agency in our lives even when it's so heavy often.